Like Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell got fired after that 10-6 season. And I think what happened is they probably thought that season was kind of a fluke. They probably thought that was kind of a fluke, or that they could upgrade. And Matt Patricia comes, it's the classic bad team. This defensive-minded coach from New England obviously knows is going to be the next Belichick for this team. Hell, my Raiders are doing that with Josh McDaniels, and I'm excited about that, but I'm a little bit nervous, right? But they're doing that sort of thing. I doubt that the Detroit Lions were like, hey, let's pop a bottle of champagne. We went 10-6, boys. We went 10-6. And then we're like, wait, but at what cost? But at what cost? We had like, Leonardo DiCaprio and Django, like, what I mean, like that guy, like I doubt it was like, guys, look, the winning season was fine, but like, look who got us. Yuck. Let's get him out of here.
RC Sports, it's in the game.
Welcome to RC Sports. RC Sports, it's in the game. Oh boy. All right. Lots to talk about today. First off, Super Bowl matchup is set. It is Cincinnati Bengals against I would say it's a road game for Cincinnati. It's a home game for St. Louis. The LA Rams. It is at SoFi Stadium. This is not the matchup I don't think a lot of people predicted. A lot of people thought it would be, Chiefs Rams, Chiefs Niners. I don't think a lot of people saw that game would end up the way that it did. Couple things on that game. I'm not going to go too far into it because I have a lot of other stuff to talk about today. Some kind of provocative stuff I wanted to get into, especially with the Brian Flores stuff. But one of the crazier debates that have happened, and I think it's insane the way we want to optimize the game to the game constantly needs rule changes. That's one thing I hate about sports and what the media always perpetuates, always suggests first take. Oh, are the overtime rules okay? Because the week before with Josh Allen, oh man, Josh Allen completely hosed. Didn't get to touch the ball in overtime. Okay. So what? I mean, he lost the coin toss. The Bills lost the coin toss. You can still play defense and stop the other team. I'm aware it's Patrick Mahomes, but you have the number one defense in the league. Stop them. Hold them to a field goal. You still get to touch the ball, right? Didn't happen. Wow, we need to change the game. We need to change the game. We need to change it. We need to go to college overtime. We need to play a 7-minute, quarter or something like that. We need all this stuff. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, maybe the game's just not fair. How about that? Maybe it's not a fair game. A lot of other stuff in life's not fair. So why would a football game be? And what is fair, right? Is this not entertaining? Are you not entertained? I find it very entertaining. I found that game entertaining, and I found the Cincinnati Bengals win over the Kansas City Chiefs entertaining. And how'd that game go in overtime? Right? Cincinnati, it looked like they squandered a golden opportunity where Mahomes was full-on jackass. Insane stuff in the red zone. Insane stuff. I don't know if it was red zone or field goal range. Dancing around in the pocket. Sam Hubbard strips the ball out of there. How do you fumble in that situation? I don't know. But it goes right to a Kansas City Chiefs offensive lineman. No harm, no foul. Kansas City gets the field goal. It's overtime. And it looks like Kansas City is going to skate into just get by, skin of his teeth, paid the bill on the final notice. The repo man was outside loading your car onto the thing, and just at the last second the bank said, nah, he paid it off, right? And everybody's thinking that. I was thinking it. I'm like, that sucks. Should have won in regulation, right? Overtime's always going to favor the home team, right? No, the Bengals stopped them. So then at that point, the Bengals only need 3 points. Bengals have just this electric kicker, McPherson. I mean, man, shooter McPherson. Guy doesn't miss. Guy does not miss. And he didn't this time. So, I mean, are the overtime rules good now? Or was it always just okay? And maybe we can't just maybe we can accept that sometimes we're not going to get a shootout in overtime. Maybe 60 minutes of football plus an added 5 minutes of gameplay where a touchdown scored. Like maybe that's okay. Maybe that's fine. I think it is. So the Super Bowl matchup set up. Rams are favored by 4 points in that game. I think that's fair, but Cincinnati just finds a way. There's been a couple times where I thought they were dead in the water this year, but they do find a way to stick around. And on the other hand, Matthew Stafford's having a hell of a postseason, and in that game against the 49ers and Rams, I mean that was another crazy game, 20-17 game, but it was action packed. High scoring and action, they don't always go together, right? I mean, like I've seen plenty of games that are just like I said, 20-17, 17-14, that a lot of hard hitting, fumbles, turnover on downs, a lot of like stuff, like really high stakes moments in this game with the Niners and Rams. You see Matthew Stafford trying to sneak a ball on fourth down after a failed challenge by Sean McVay, and they don't get it. I mean, that's high stakes stuff right there that leads to no points, not even a first down. That's why I love the game of football. It's because just like one play is just can be so huge. You know what I mean? In Major League Baseball, there's a few huge pitches in the game, few huge at bats in the game, few huge innings in the game, but they just don't seem to have that magnitude for every single game, right? Like the NFL does. The NFL seems to always have like a pivotal moment in the game. And the games I feel like have been close this year. I don't have the metrics in front of me. They've been really close. But you see the Mina Kimes situation, right, with Jimmy G. And I'll say this right now: Mina Kimes was right about Jimmy G, but Mina Kimes essentially had the take of me going outside and say, "Hey, sky, I think the sky's blue. Jimmy G sucks. He's not a good quarterback." It's become comical how well built the 49ers are around Jimmy G. In fact, I envy that. I think if I'm building a team, I like the 49ers model a lot because you're always just a quarterback away, and it doesn't have to be elite. You might argue it has to be, better than Jimmy G to win it all. But 2 out of the last 3 years, the Niners have been in the Super Bowl. Right? Or a game away from the Super Bowl this time, So they lose the NFC Championship game, but I mean, essentially, you're doing what Patrick Mahomes did without the win. Like you're that much. Jimmy G and Patrick Mahomes are not even in the same tier. Not even. I don't even think there's the same food pyramid. Like I don't think any of that's debatable at all. I think most people understand the greatness of Patrick Mahomes and the ineptitude of Jimmy G. But Mina Kimes says that Jimmy G's holding the Niners back, right? That he's holding the 49ers back. That was her take. And Jeff Garcia comes in, and Jeff Garcia says, "Hey, you don't know what you're talking about. You ever played the game before?" Now, okay. No, I don't think she has. I'm just going to guess that she's not an NFL player. And Jeff Garcia played in the NFL for a while. In fact, I think there were times he might have been better than Jimmy G in a couple of years. Truly. I'm a little biased. He's from around where I'm from. And but he's a 49er quarterback. It's a fraternity. All quarterbacks are a fraternity, but like quarterbacks from the same franchise, a lot of them are fraternity. Like it's a very fraternal thing. Sports is a very fraternal thing. Mina Kimes has never been in a fraternity. And I think it's kind of weird that the "have you ever played football" is looked at as a sexist remark, right? Because most of these journalists have not played football, right? Most of them haven't. Mina Kimes is on ESPN right now, right? She's got her own stuff too. And I think analytically, she has some good points that she makes, and I think she's one of those people that leans a little too hard on analytics, but that's her thing. Whatever. No problem. But have you ever played the game? That is a Lindy moment, right? I know a lot of people aren't online. Lindy is just something that's always happened. That's okay. That doesn't feel like a weird change in the world, right? That's always been the thing. Like, hey, why don't you try it, asshole? You think you can go out there and do it, right? Which we know that's not a valid critique. Like if you walk by a house and it looks like it's built like shit, you could say, oh yeah, the house looks like shit. And then the contractor's like, hey, let's see you build it. I can't, but it looks like shit. So he doesn't come off to me as like a huge, misogynist or something like that. It doesn't strike me as something that he's like truly thinks that women shouldn't be allowed to talk about football. You know what I mean? And there was another moment with Nora Princiotti from The Ringer, who had this weird tweet that we'll just assume she's telling the truth with this. But Nora Princiotti was basically the day after the championship games. She was in a taxi cab or Uber, Lyft, some kind of rideshare service, and her boyfriend was with her. And the Uber driver then speaks to her boyfriend, right? Not about her, because she has to. He's a man and only feels he can talk to another man about football in this scenario, which is so wild to think. And he says, the driver says, "Hey, how about see that game yesterday? Mahomes, what a choke artist." And then he looks at Nora, the driver, and says, "Hey, did your husband tell you that this guy makes $45 million a year and he plays like this?" So Nora, smirking Wojak, the nerds will rise again, says, "Oh, I didn't know that he made that much money, but the Bengals dropped 8 into coverage 45% of the time, and Mahomes did not adjust. And it was supposed to be like this, Legally Blonde Elle Woods moment. It was supposed to be this other insane thing where oh man, fucking owned with facts and logic, in that scenario. And I don't think. First off, that was a surface level sports conversation, and anybody who's like a sports, obsessed with sports, you understand, you have to have a sense of like, okay, who am I talking to and how far can I go with this? And that conversation was about Mahomes, right? The one guy in the league that a lot of people will know off the top of the bat, Patrick Mahomes. Okay. I'm assuming the game was kind of local too. So it's like Patrick Mahomes, he's the quarterback of the football team, right? And he makes a lot of money. I read that he makes $45 million. The conversation wasn't really meant to go much deeper than that, right? But Nora Princiotti is like, he got Bengals the coverage analytics. It's like, okay, you're a nerd. And that's the thing with Mina Kimes. She's a fucking nerd too. And instead of saying, oh, women can't talk about stuff like this in sports, no, nerds shouldn't. And football players who actually did grind really hard and, played at a tough level, risked all this traumatic brain injury that the nerds often virtue signal with and stuff, that they care about that kind of stuff. Those people have a sense of pride, right? These football players, they have a sense of pride about what they've done. And they've always felt that, like, especially now, sports was the one place where nerds weren't really allowed, right? Everybody's seen the old movies like Revenge of the Nerds and stuff and all that. Like, sports was the kind of place where nerds typically were not allowed. And that's looked at as bad. But I mean, look at every other job in the world right now. It's run by nerds. We have fake jobs where nerds enter numbers into computers and stuff like that. Sports is one of the last sacred places for just jocks, right? I mean, jocks aren't really looked at in a positive light much anymore other than sports, right? Bros, meatheads, whatever. So I could understand sport athletes getting territorial over that and just like, okay, go code somewhere. Go do what you can do. I play sports, okay? I don't even think Jeff Garcia is correct. Jeff Garcia is defending Jimmy Garoppolo. Mina Kimes said the correct take. But he's not saying that you're wrong because you're a woman. And it became like this terror level orange situation at ESPN where Stephen A. Smith was like, I talked to Mina Kimes. Mina Kimes is the smartest woman I've ever seen talk about football on TV. And for somebody like Jeff Garcia, to say, Mina Kimes doesn't know nothing about football, get back in the kitchen and make a sandwich, that's disgusting. You can't wear that. That's gross. I think Jeff Garcia should be deplatformed from Twitter. Like, just he didn't say exactly that, but it's just like it's very odd. It's very odd that everybody had to come to the defense. Everybody had to do that. But I've heard that said to other people, to male writers, and then Brian Windhorst. You know what I'm saying? Does Brian Windhorst look like he's played NBA basketball before? Google Brian Windhorst if you haven't seen him. Guy's huge. Augustus Gloop, like huge. And I don't think that would create terror level orange. Although I think the criticism of him would be the same thing. Right? Cam Newton had that same situation. He lost an Oikos yogurt sponsorship over it a while back because he said the same thing. Reporter happened to be a woman. And Cam Newton's thing was like, no, I just know you haven't played. And it's dumb. It's a defensive thing from athletes. I will say that. It's a defensive thing. It's kind of a defense mechanism. I don't necessarily know that it's a solid, retort. But it's something that's always been around. So deal with it, in my opinion. Moving on. I want to talk about Brian Flores. The coaching search. Every single year, the coaching search, we hear the same thing. Jim Caldwell still doesn't have a job. Kaepernick still doesn't have a job. He's not a quarterback. Jim Caldwell doesn't have a job. David, this year it's David Culley got fired. How could they fire? Google's the Texans coach. David Culley pulls up images. Oh my God, how could they fire David Culley after seeing the image of David Culley? How could they? How could the Texans fire this in an obvious tanking year? And we'll get to tanking in a little bit. How could they fire my sweet David Culley? But a coach that went 8-8 this year, Brian Flores, that was, that was a questionable fire at the time. At the time, I was like, this is a questionable fire. Like, he shouldn't, I don't know what the Dolphins are doing, right? So you dig into it, right? You dig into the firing. It sounds like, okay, Brian Flores wanted Justin Herbert over Tua Tagovailoa. In retrospect, yeah. I think a lot of people do, right? A lot of people would in that scenario. If we did a redraft, I'd rather have Justin Herbert over Tua. I mean, at the time, there were people saying that should have happened. Even though Tua, I think, was a much more lauded prospect, I should say, right? I mean, Joe Burrow was a clear number one, but at that time, right? And then Tua doesn't really play right away. Ryan Fitzpatrick gets the snaps. And I don't think ownership like that. They want to play their brand new guy in that cool, like, aqua toothpaste uniform. Like, they want him to go out there and play. But it didn't stop there. Brian Flores, it was reported that he wanted to trade for Deshaun Watson. Now, so far, he's picked two better quarterbacks in his brain that are better than Tua Tagovailoa, in my opinion. Now, Deshaun Watson, we don't know about that availability, what that would have been like, or what that's going to be like. But nonetheless, Brian Flores is fired. The GM is retained, Chris Greer, who I don't think has done that good of a job there. And, it's assumed that Brian Flores is going to get another job. It's assumed that he's going to get another job. He was there. He was supposed to lose a bunch of games his first year there. He wins 8 games the year after. I mean, like 8 games, 8-8. They started out bad, started out horrible, had a really soft spot in their schedule, and they won about 7 straight. They had a 7-game losing streak and a 7-game winning streak in the same season, which I don't believe has ever happened. And, they beat up on the bad teams, lost to the good teams. They were an 8-8 team. That's kind of what 8-8 means, or whatever, 8-9, 9-8, whatever the hell they were. It was something like that. And it's, it's questionable. And the Dolphins are not an organization where people are like, oh, wow, they know what they're doing. Most people don't say that about the Miami Dolphins, right? Not since Don Shula days. Like, you haven't seen that too often. But Brian Flores, it's assumed that he's going to get interviews. People are saying he's going to get an interview with the Vikings, the Broncos. Everybody's going to want this guy. It gets kind of quiet for a while, right? But Brian Flores gets an interview with the New York Giants, I guess. And now the interview, I believe, had not happened yet, if I have this correctly. And Bill Belichick was already saying, hey, congratulations on the job, Brian. hey, Brian, congratulations on the job. Brian Flores is like, hey, what? Okay. And he kind of like, you could tell he's kind of like, what have you heard? Belichick's like, hey, they heard you crush the interview. Like, you're the guy. I think this is going to be great. This is good. Whatever. And then some time goes by in the time of the text, and Belichick then texts Brian Flores and says, "Oh, I've made a mistake. I was talking to Brian Dable, not you." Brian Dable then gets the job for the New York Giants, and he says sorry, and then puts BB at the end. I love that he signed it. Always loved it. It's like HH Hulk Hogan, like how he used to tweet and stuff. So, okay. That does seem weird, right? But it also seems like a 72-year-old, 71-year-old guy fucking up with technology. Now, to be fair, I think Bill Belichick knows what he's doing with technology. At least he employed people that knew what to do with technology, if you know what I'm saying. If you know what I'm saying. And so Brian Flores realizes he has an interview the next day with the Giants, but he's probably not going to get the job. There's a rule called the Rooney Rule that comes in 20 years prior to this that says that I think you have to interview, I believe it used to just be one coach of color before you make your hire, right? Because the idea behind that rule is that this coach is going to blow your mind so hard that you're just going to have to hire him. Otherwise, you would have never interviewed him because the NFL is extremely racist. But you're going to get like a Remember the Titans type moment where this guy's going to come in and just blow your mind. You would have never thought to hire him, but you just can't pass him up. And that was going to be the utility of the Rooney Rule. I believe it's up to 2 minority candidates now. And you're still not really seeing much of a change in the NFL as far as what the coaches look like. And Brian Flores then sues the NFL. This was the shocking part of this. Was Brian Flores actually went out and sued the NFL. Now, when you sue the NFL and you are a non-owner, you're probably not going to get another job. At least not while the suit is pending or whatever. And I don't imagine the NFL looks too kindly on people that sue them. But I'm reading the complaint by Brian Flores to the NFL. And there are a lot of numbers in it. There are that the league is 70% black. It's 70% black, and the owners watch a top NFL. This is from his actual statement. The owners watch the games from a top NFL stadiums in their luxury boxes, while the majority black workforce put their bodies on the line every Sunday, taking vicious hits and suffering debilitating injuries from their bodies and brains while the owners reap billions of dollars. I mean, it kind of sounds like they're running a business there, Brian, but nonetheless, yeah, okay. 70% of the players are black in the NFL. That I don't even need to check that number. You can just tell when you watch a game. Now, when you look at who becomes a coach in the NFL, it's not typically a star player, right? You don't see a lot of star players become head coach, at least not successful ones. A lot of coaches are either from career coaching families. There's a nepotism element to the NFL. I won't deny that. But then there's also the, backup quarterback thing, the Frank Reich, right? Frank Reich has some postseason lore. He had some great history where I believe I want to say, I can't remember what team it was, but it was either the Bills or the Giants in the 80s. Did he come in? I think that was Jeff Hofstadter. I can't remember. Frank Reich was the Bills. Yeah, Frank Reich was the Bills. Played a playoff game, led them back from being down a bunch of points when Jim Kelly was hurt. And he wasn't a bad quarterback, but he was a backup quarterback. And for a long time, the quarterbacks were white, for the most part. That number seems to be getting eaten into a little bit. And I'm not going to say that maybe there wasn't a little discrimination back in the day as far as like certain guys, quarterbacks mentally processing certain things and stuff. I look, it's been documented. I don't doubt that that's true. And I don't doubt that prejudice was probably used for head coaches. But you look at guys like Mike Tomlin, who everybody respects as a top coach in the league. You look at quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. These guys are respected around the league. Yeah, there might be a snide comment about him here and there, but that's NFL media for you. Everybody has to have an anti this player take, right? It just has to happen. The discourse must go on. But what I'm saying is like typically, I think a lot of guys now are just kind of like unathletic white guys that knew a lot about the game, right? And a lot of the black players, they weren't spending a lot of time on the bench talking to the coach and picking the coach's brain. They were playing, right? Like they were playing. In baseball, you see that too. The backup catcher a lot of times becomes a manager, right? Like Joe Torre. I mean, Joe Torre is actually a starting catcher. That's not a good example, but like Bob Brenly, guys like that. Like these guys become, you know, a lot of times like Hall of Famers like Ted Williams aren't really going to be good head coaches. In fact, he was terrible. Magic Johnson tried to coach the Lakers, terrible, like just bad. So it's like when you look at that number, I have a hard time believing that NFL owners in 2022, right now, this day and age, after seeing success, after seeing Mike Tomlin win a Super Bowl, after seeing, uh, coaches like, Jim Caldwell have successful seasons, after seeing, insert name here, right? When you see that, I have a hard time believing that when they get the candidate that they want, right? When they get the candidate that they want, I don't know that they necessarily think I have to keep the organization white. We have to keep it pure. I don't know that because they even say that the owners reap billions of dollars and this is all about making white men rich. If it's all about making white men rich, you want to put asses in the seats, right? So you're going to want to have a good coach for your football team. And let's talk about Brian Flores. Brian Flores, I think, is a good football coach. I think he's a good football mind. But Brian Flores is not a squeaky clean guy as far as what his players say about him. Kenny Stills in 2019, I want to say it was Flores' first year there. Kenny Stills was saying that he was playing Jay-Z had a quote that said kneeling is over, right? Which was in reference to the Colin Kaepernick kneel for the flag. That was what was happening. Kenny Stills was a big part of that. And Kenny Stills didn't like that, and didn't like that Jay-Z said that, and I guess he made it clear. Now, Brian Flores used to play a lot of Jay-Z at practice and make it clear that it was for Kenny Stills to listen to. Now, that's just a little coach get inside your head. I have a feeling the coach was like, I want to piss you off, and I want to get you, amped up. I want to see an emotional side of you. I could see that. But it's kind of a dick move, I guess, right? If you're Kenny Stills. He used to get Tua Tagovailoa, who he never wanted. He used to order PED tests for Tua Tagovailoa when Tua looked like he was in more shape than he should be. For your own quarterback, I've never heard of that, of a coach saying, I want my quarterback PED tested, right? There's definitely some issues with the Belichick coaching tree, right? A lot of Belichick coaching tree guys, they don't have the success of winning as a head coach, so the players don't buy in as well, but they're just as much of a dickhead as Belichick is, and they try to run just as tight of a ship, military level, and it just doesn't really resonate with players when you're 8-8, There's also some coordinators that have had some fallouts with Brian Flores, and it looks like he's a little bit tough to work with at times. But again, I still think he's a pretty good football mind, and he was on my short list of Raiders candidates at the beginning of the offseason because I didn't know all this stuff. And, the big thing about Jim Caldwell was fired. Let me look up Jim Caldwell because I think I have the years right here. Jim Caldwell coached the Colts. He was a good coach. Good coach. I think he was. He was fired for, let's see. And yes, he was fired in, I'm sorry, I'm looking this up right now. Yeah, he was fired to bring in Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia was the New England guy, and he was fired after a 10-6 season. And the 10-6 season was, I mean that for the Lions, 10-6, hell yeah. Let's have a parade in Detroit. Let's have a parade. And that is kind of weird to fire a coach after a 10-6 season when your franchise never wins anything. But what I have a problem with all these coaches, with these coach firings and just chalking them up to race or identity or something, is that we are all assuming when we say this that organizations are all well run, they all make the right decisions, and none of them are inept. Like the Lions are bad for a reason. The Lions have had so much turnover, bad draft pick after bad draft pick. Their quarterback is now starting in the Super Bowl right now after having a horrible record against winning teams his whole time with Detroit. There were questions about him. I was one of those people asking questions about him. The Dolphins are another bad organization, right? Like they're a lot of these my Raiders, not good. You know what I mean? When they fire a coach, I don't necessarily, I may not like the coach, but I could also, there's always in the back of my mind, like, is it just us? Carson Palmer wasn't like all that great with the Raiders. They end up trading him to Arizona. He is like just MVP candidate. And so I hate that we chalk this up to like, no. These organizations know exactly what they're doing. They are trying to keep their organization white more than win. And I don't think that's true. I just don't think that's true. I think winning is so important. I think making money is so important. And I think that the optics of today, I mean, it even helps to have a black coach. No, obviously it does, right? And to say this is like to the people who really want to like I want more black coaches in the league. Like ESPN says the same thing. So like how you don't have an unpopular take, and it's not like some subversive like, oh God, can he say that? Can he say that they want more more black coaches in the league? Is that no way. Like, no, Max Kellerman, literally everything on the ESPN programming block is like, we need more black coaches, and we need more of this, we need more of that. So obviously it helps, right? This is just another thing of like neoliberal identity politics. That is what this is. And this is just another arm to reach in, because politics in sports have always been, at least since 2016, I used to only hear about anything from sports. I'd hear about a TV show that was on later because of a sports program. I'd hear about all this stuff, and until I actually made an effort to go find politics elsewhere, I only heard about politics once they started introducing them to ESPN. So this is a way to get people to buy into like that neoliberal stuff. Like it just is. And that's not saying I don't think black people can coach. I think they can, and they do. But I want football to operate as a meritocracy, a true meritocracy. I don't think the Rooney Rule does that. And Brian Flores is suing the NFL for saying that he felt like he was going to be lined up for like almost a performative interview, going through the motions, right? That is what the Rooney Rule is, though. You put a rule in there that is performative. I'm sorry. It just is. And there are only a few organizations that actually are run pretty well. That's why a lot of teams don't let good GMs go. That's why, you know what I'm saying? That's why Mike Tomlin is still with the Steelers. There are a lot of bad organizations in football that make bad mistakes. And to chalk up every bad mistake as racist, like Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell got fired after that 10-6 season. And I think what happened was they probably thought that season was kind of a fluke. Or that they could upgrade. And Matt Patricia it's the classic bad team. This defensive-minded coach from New England obviously knows is going to be the next Belichick for this team. Hell, my Raiders are doing that with Josh McDaniels, and I'm excited about that, but I'm a little bit nervous, right? But they're doing that sort of thing. I doubt that the Detroit Lions were like, hey, let's pop a bottle of champagne. We went 10-6, boys. We went 10-6. And then we're like, wait, but at what cost? We had Leonardo DiCaprio and Django, like, you know what I mean? Like that guy, like I doubt it was like, guys, look, the winning season was fine, but like, look who got us it. Yuck. Let's get him out of here. I doubt that happened. Looking at the paint swatches, like the Family Guy meme, like, it's just, I don't know. Nepotism is a big deal in the NFL, though. I'll give you that. Nepotism is a big deal. I mean, Shanahan, McVay, all that stuff, they're all nepotism hires. But are they bad? Are they bad? Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. Sean McVay's a great coach. Sean McVay's coaching tree has produced, I mean, you could even say Brandon Staley, Zach Taylor, who Sean McVay's going to be playing in the Super Bowl, Kevin O'Connell, who's going to be probably the Vikings' next head coach. I mean, they're good. I'm sorry. Andy Reid's coaching tree. It feels like half the league is either from Sean McVay, the Shanahans, or the Harbaugh, John Harbaugh's coaching, or I'm sorry, Andy Reid's coaching tree with John Harbaugh. And then if Doug Peterson ends up getting a job, he's a Super Bowl winning coach. Or the Belichick coaching tree. Coaches get lazy, or owners get lazy. They find somebody who's succeeding, and they just find somebody from that staff or somebody from that coaching tree, and they call it a day. People say, what about Eric Bieniemy? He's got a domestic violence thing on his record, right? And I'm just tired of okay, so the people who are complaining about not enough black coaches in the league, they're probably saying the same people that are saying the NFL ignores domestic violence and stuff like that too, right? I'm just going to make that clear. And they're probably the same people who would get mad at a guy like Brian Flores for making fun of Kenny Stills for kneeling for the national anthem, right? Also, Mike Tomlin said that nobody on the Steelers is going to kneel for the national anthem because Alejandro Villanueva is a Naval Academy guy. So, yeah, it's not exactly, woke black coaches that are in the league. And I don't think the NFL is a woke sport. It's just not. So, I don't know. And I'm looking through these Brian Flores things again, dude. I'm looking through more of his stuff. And he is citing the Gruden emails in his complaint to the NFL from 2011. And I fucking knew these were going to become the new template for how, white supremacist the NFL is going to be two guys emailing each other, cracking jokes about people, and most of them just being homophobic, honestly. And let's find out Brian Flores' view on gay guys before we even say that that's an issue. Let's find out the Honduran heritage, Brian Flores. Let's find out how he feels about the LGBT community. I'm sure super chill. I'm sure he respects pronouns and everything. But I knew that was going to be the thing. I knew that was deployed for a reason. I knew John Gruden was a fall guy for a reason. And now it's going to be cited in almost every racial complaint to the NFL. Yeah, so there is something that I think that Brian Flores has a case for, though. And this is bad. In my opinion, this is bad. This is bad, and I think this can be chalked up to analytics. Tanking. Brian Flores reportedly was offered $100,000 to tank the season in Miami. Now, I say no if I'm a head coach when they do that. I would say no. I think Brian Flores was right to say no. And he didn't. He actually had a nice season, given what the roster he had. He had said, I'm not doing it. And it's fair because the NFL means not for long, right? It stands for not for long, right? But you're not going to be around for a while. Coaches get fired fast. I've never seen coaches get fired, more turnover in the NFL than you do this year. There were 9 openings, I believe, in the NFL this year. That's almost a third of the league, it seems like, had a coach opening. It's a thing. It happens fast. You only get so often. So if you're going to sign up to tank for $100,000, there's no guarantee you have that job the next year for millions. It's not worth the trade-off. And tanking is objectively bad, and I also don't think it's that effective. I mean, when you set out to tank, and here's why. I just said it earlier. I think a lot of these organizations are inept. I don't think the Dolphins know how to properly use the number 1 overall pick. And even if you do tank, it's not guaranteed that you get the number 1 pick. I'd argue the Detroit Lions tanked this year, not on the field. I don't believe players tank on the field, by the way. Organizations tank. They give you a shit roster, and they anticipate that you won't be able to beat another NFL team with it. But when you have somebody like even Brian Flores, Dan Campbell, a hard-ass coach like that will not settle for piss poor effort and stuff, typically you end up grinding out 3 wins, which could get you the number 2 or 3 overall pick. Then you don't get that slam dunk Trevor Lawrence pick. Sometimes the number 1 overall pick is Jadeveon Clowney, right? And then Khalil Mack going a couple picks later. Aaron Donald going 5 picks after Khalil Mack. The number 1 overall pick doesn't always mean that you're going to get the number 1 guy in the draft. In fact, I'd argue most of the time it doesn't. Right? Maybe not most of the time, but there's times where it's a slam dunk. Peyton Manning, Joe Burrow, guys like that. I don't know. Kyler Murray. When you tanked number one, if you tanked to get Kyler Murray, do we think Kyler Murray's winning a Super Bowl? No. There's 53 spots on a roster. In the NBA, this makes sense. In the NBA, it makes sense to have a draft lottery because one player on an 11-man roster, oh God, it's huge, especially if you draft the next superstar. But it doesn't make sense to do it on an NFL roster year in and year out because attendance goes down. People lose interest in your team. There's only so many games to where you can gain that money. And if you are a prestige organization, right? If you're like a Steelers, the Bears, you can't do it all the time. You can't do it so often. You can't do it for 2 or 3 years in a row. Your fans aren't patient. They are used to winning. You can only do it if you're the Lions, Raiders. Even then, Raider fans aren't going to be okay with that. But like Lions, Jaguars, teams like that, sure. And like I said, one player, I've seen teams draft one player and then the next year they're out of the top 5 in the draft and they don't know what to do when a player doesn't just fall into their lap. When a stork doesn't come by and just drop Trevor Lawrence in your lap, doesn't drop Joe Burrow in your lap. I mean, sometimes it's Jamarcus Russell. Sometimes that's the number 1 overall pick. It happens. I've seen it happen. I'm still sad from it. So Brian Flores is right, and I think you got to get that out of the league. Because now people are, again, here's how we can change the greatest sport in the world that's operating at a great level right now. We need to change it because people want a draft lottery in the NFL. No, sorry. No, it's not necessary. There's parity in the league. I'm sorry. There is. There's this whole thing that like Mahomes is unbeatable. Remember when Mahomes won his first Super Bowl? No one's ever going to win a Super Bowl again. Really? Just saw him lose to Joe Burrow. That's the beauty of the NFL. Is that it's a 53-man roster. And sometimes the defensive tackle makes the biggest play of the game. Sometimes special teams wins a game. And you only have a certain amount of games, right? It's not extrapolated over an 83 games or 82 game span, 162 game span like baseball and basketball. Sometimes you just don't have that many opportunities, and that's why football is the greatest sport. And teams can tank. And it's encouraged by the analytic nerds, the people I was making fun of earlier. Those who encourage tanking more than anybody. Oh man, if this team had just lost those last 2 games, they would have had Nick Bosa. Oh, this would have been better. They would have had this player instead. Really? You think they would have? You can guarantee they would have picked them? I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't think tanking's worth it. And if you're a player, why do you agree to do it, right? If you're a player on a 1-year deal and you put intentionally bad film on tape, do you think you get another contract in the NFL when you just look like shit? Are you going to go tell the when you're a free agent and you're getting meetings to maybe sign with a team or a team's interested in signing you? They're like, hey, what happened last year? You're going to be like, oh, I was not trying. It's not going to work. It's suicide. So yeah, I mean that's my take on it. I didn't want to take up too much of your time tonight, but I just think that wanted to cover a few of those things. Last thing is just Tom Brady. I am doing a podcast with my friend Filthy Armenian. We're starting a new thing. It's going to be paywalled, so you will have to pay to watch it in its entirety. But we are watching old games together and kind of podcasting over it. The sound is off on the game, but if you watch with us, you can watch the game and we comment on it. We sometimes almost, play by play it a little bit, but most of the time we're just conversing over it. It's going really well so far. But we watched the Tuck Rule. Basically the genesis of Brady, He had a pretty good season. He was 18 touchdowns, 12 interceptions and that year. So it's, pretty good for a guy coming in for Drew Bledsoe who wasn't supposed to play that year. That is good. And they won their division and didn't even have to play in wild card weekend. But, it took me a long time to say it because I didn't want to say it because I wanted to deny reality. But Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. It's not even close, to be honest. He has 7 rings, and after he broke away from the Patriots, dynasty, he did it again with Tampa, and honestly, almost beat the Rams again. I mean, like you almost saw that glimpse of like, oh my God, is he going to do it again? I think next year he could have won a Super Bowl, to be honest, had he played. But what more does he need to accomplish? And I think that we are kind of losing athletes in the game as the game gets more kind of soft, a little more player friendly. We are losing that killer instinct psychopath athlete. I think that's dwindling in the game, and it's not really. You're kind of supposed to be like vulnerable and like talk about mental health now and stuff among players. But I miss the cyborg player, and I hated Brady. I hated every moment of his career. Hated it. Actively rooted for him to lose. But he's a villain to me, and the game needs a good villain, not just a villain when he loses is like, oh, mental health, I have anxiety, I need SSRIs. No, man. Brady was the greatest. That 28-3 comeback is what did it for me. It took a while. People were saying he was the greatest before that, but that 28-3 comeback, that's unbelievable in the Super Bowl. Falcons played their part in it, but like there was a time where it just didn't matter. You could just see it on Brady. You're like, he's not going to lose this game. So hats off to him. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, first ballot, obviously. I mean, the greatest quarterback ever. And did it with a limited skill set, in my opinion, as far as just raw tools. But he was insane football IQ and just an absolute psychopath. And so that's it for me, guys. I'm Glen Rockney. Follow me on Twitter at Glen Rockney. The podcast I was talking about earlier is called The Back Wall. That's with my buddy Filthy Armenian. That'll be launching really soon. So if you'd like to give me and Filthy Armenian some money, the links will be available. Just follow me on Twitter, like I said, at Glen Rockney. I have another podcast called Rare Candy. That's rolling. We're 117 episodes in. Oh my gosh, can't believe it. Make sure you check that out. Subscribe to this channel. This is RC Sports. I do Raiders live streams, and then I do RC Sports videos whenever I can. And appreciate you guys. Everyone have a good one.